his wares. So, Andrew, thank you very much.
Right, hi guys. Hopefully it's going to work this time. Cool. Right, my name is Andrew Thompson, or Andy. Andrew when I've done something wrong, when mum's around. I've got 10 years working in IT, in software solutions. I started as a developer, but I've moved up into a technical consulting and lead role. I've got experience working in both onshore and offshore teams, and obviously the challenges that each bring. And from this, I've developed a passion towards continuous integration and the web. So the agenda for today, I'm going to talk about the drivers around continuous integration, a couple of slides on continuous integration setup, some Sitecore specific scenarios and considerations, and then I'm going to show you SonarQube and the Siren of Shame towards the end. Okay, so what are the drivers around continuous integration? Well, the first is quality. We want to provide high quality, robust solutions for our customers. If we do this, they're likely to come back to us. It leads to repeat business, and it ultimately makes us more money, which is the next slide. And if we can save more money by having less bugs, we're going to make bigger profit margins for the company. And also, continuous integration can help us with collaborative working. So I'm sure hopefully you've all experienced it. You come in the morning really early, you think, yeah, it's going to be a really productive day. You do a checkout, and all of a sudden your whole build is broken, nothing works. And you end up spending the next 2 to 3 hours sorting out someone else's problems. If we use continuous integration, we have a build set up, this shouldn't happen. The person that checked in the day before, you should fix their problem, they'll instantly know that they've done something wrong. Continuous integration also supports an Agile delivery model. The ability to build, compile, test on the fly is inherently Agile. Obviously, continuous integration isn't limited to Agile, you can use it in a waterfall model, but yeah, it's a benefit if you're working as an Agile team. And again, another key benefit of continuous integration is the ability to make informed decisions at every level. Have a view on software health and reduce assumptions. So the project manager may not know the state of the code. They want to be able to look at the build or some of the code analysis stats and instantly say, yeah, I'm happy with that. We've got a build that's passing. Our unit test coverage is at 80%. So I'm happy to do a deployment. We're reducing assumptions. So you may say to a developer, are you ready to do the deployment? Yeah, I've packaged it up, it works on my local machine. But as we all know, if you deploy that into a production environment, there's something's going to go wrong. Okay, so continuous integration helps us catch bugs. Now, we're not always going to be able to eliminate the nasty bugs, they're always going to be there. But what continuous integration can do is it can help us get rid of the silly bugs. These shouldn't get any further than the developer. So things like broken null checks, really, really basic stuff. So what I've tried to show here is basically, if you catch bugs earlier in the process, less people get involved. What I've tried to show is that a developer's time and maybe a test analyst is worth half as much as a TC, a PM, or a business analyst. But as you can see, the further along the process, so from the developer to the QA stage, to the system test stage, once it gets to UAT and prod, it's almost 9 times as much. Now, take those figures with a pinch of salt because they're just my figures, but the concept is the further along the line it gets, more people are involved and it's costing more. And if you think for one bug, if it's 9 times as much, if you've got 30 bugs for a specific phase, it's costing you a hell of a lot of money. And once you get across the line from system test to UAT and prod, you're damaging your company's reputation. The customer's looking at you and thinking, well, these are silly bugs. Why are they getting this far? Where's the robustness of this system? Okay, so why do these bugs get that far? In my experience, it's just generally down to pressure. When you're up against tight timescales, the customer's putting pressure on the project manager, that's going down to the technical lead, and then the developer's being rushed as well. My favourite motto, and a thing that I've picked up from the time is, from my time in IT, is that if you take more haste, you generally get less speed. And basically, with continuous integration, the idea is, can we think like a tortoise but actually run like a hare? And hopefully continuous integration can help us do that. So a basic example of continuous integration is you'll have a source control system, which hopefully a lot of you guys use. I mean, how many of you actually implement continuous integration in your companies, and most people? What tools? Is it TeamCity, Bamboo, TeamCity, and Git or Subversion? Okay. Okay, cool. So yeah, you guys are probably familiar with this. So your basic setup's a source control system. You've got a build server, and then that's basically initiating a build and running some unit tests at the very basic setup. Continuous integration, holy grail. So you basically have a build server. You may have multiple slaves or servers. You may have multiple customers, maybe multiple projects for each customer. So basically working out how many slaves you need, or how many agents. And then extending the steps of your build to include things like code quality, maybe integration test and web test, maybe some reporting to maybe the project managers or some of your customers. Maybe they want some code analysis reports, and then package and deployment to servers, or I'll talk later, but we have a different use case. Okay, so the things to consider obviously when you're thinking about continuous integration is your use case. So have a look at your build plans. What build plans do you need? What do you want to get out of it? So do you want simply a plan that's going to run for your developers just to do a quick build and unit test? Or do you want a full deployment package that's going to do the web testing, that's going to do the code analysis and deployment? So work out what build plans that you want. Again, you need to pick your tools. For me, the tools are kind of irrelevant. It comes down to what you're comfortable with. I personally like Bamboo, but I've used Hudson, Cruise Control. I haven't used TeamCity, and that's next on the agenda to support that, because Anthony mentioned that a couple of you guys use that, so we're going to have a look at that as well. And then obviously whether you're going to host it in the cloud or local, and I'll show you. I'll talk about what we've done in a couple of slides' time. So again, the main consideration for me is the process and management around it. Actually, the tools, don't matter too much, but it's managing your source control branches, managing the slaves and agents for building. Do you want a slave per customer or a slave per project? Obviously, the more slaves you use, most of the pricing models on these products are the more slaves and more agents that you have, the more it's going to cost. So you've got to balance the cost benefit, and obviously try and keep it simple. The more branches that you've got, the more versions. Maybe you've got a production release, you've got a support release, you've got a release candidate, you've got a Kaizen branch. I've had in the past. Once you start doing that, the more branches you get, the merges become a lot more difficult, and they're, as anyone knows, they're an absolute nightmare. So try and keep it as simple as possible as you can. And another key thing for me is configuration management. So I've got a little quote. So a recent Gartner study has said that through 2015, 80% of outages will be caused by people and process issues, and that more than 50% of these outages will be caused by change, configuration and release integration issues. So if you can track the application and component versioning, then you're going some way to avoiding some of these issues. So again, pick a tool. This could be Excel, text in source, maybe something like Confluence or Yammer that people can contribute to, and obviously track your component version. track your component versions, because actually the bug may not be in your code, it may be in a plugin that you're using or a package in Sitecore's case. So the other example is a bug's being found, you don't know where it is, you've got no idea what components made up that specific version you've got that you've got the problem with. So where do you start? And if you've got information, if you're managing configuration management, then it's going to help you diagnose that bug and diagnose that issue a lot quicker. So at Sitecore, in the month or so that I've been there, we've tried to set up something for our Office Core solution. That's our demo Sitecore solution that we use for when we go on sales visits to demo to the customers. So what I've done is try to put a continuous integration set up around that. Just so I see taking photos, I'm actually going to distribute these slides afterwards. So if you want to download them, you can. Okay, so we're actually using Bitbucket and Git, configured to use Git, and we're hosting that on Atlassian. We've done that just because we don't have any custom configuration needed, so we're happy to host that out, and we don't really want to manage the setup ourselves.
And it's free.
And it's free.
Well, I'm free.
Although Bamboo isn't, but £7.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay for it. So we're using Bamboo. The only reason we're using Bamboo over something like Hudson is I just like the extra bits you get with the paid version. It's just easier to clone plans, it's easier to create tasks and things like that. I haven't used TeamCity. I assume that's on the same vein. So Bamboo's running on an Amazon EC2 instance. We use Maven to actually initiate the build. The only reason I do that is because later on I'll show you Sonar, but Sonar uses a Maven plugin in order to collect its data, and there's a nice little .NET Maven tool to call MS-Build. So I just use Maven, but there's nothing to stop me calling MS-Build from the command line automatically. We use Sitecore, so we have a vanilla instance installed on our continuous integration server. We then copy that so that we can keep that isolated from our build process, so we can be assured that nothing's gone wrong in the Sitecore package itself. We install all our packages on Sitecore on the vanilla instance before we build. That's a manual task. One of the things I want to extend, and I've seen some blog posts on the net, is to automate that process, so actually install Sitecore manually as part of the process and install the packages as part of the build process as well. But at the moment, that's all pre-done. We use PowerShell quite heavily and Sitecore's PowerShell scripts in order to do things like publishing and the TDS, some of the TDS. Oh yeah, so sorry, we use PowerShell to actually install the application in IIS and SQL Server. And we use it also to modify the config files, so things like app config and connection strings. Yeah, and as I said, Sitecore rocks PowerShell is just to do the publish.
Don't forget, we call TDS and deploy the content packages in as well.
Yeah, that's done as part of the MS-Build, so MS-Build actually calls TDS as part of that. And the next slide probably worth me showing. So our general use case is to package up this installation package for the sales guys, so they can download it, run an install script, and it'll install it onto their system, so they've always got the latest stable version. So we actually use Dropbox to do that. We could use an FTP site or something like that, but what we do is it's quite simple. I just do a copy command with PowerShell and it just copies the zip file into Dropbox. SonarQube, I'm going to show you that in a second, but that's to do with code quality. I don't know if any of you guys have used that before. And the Siren of Shame, I'm going to show you that as well. That's a fun build monitor, so it's a tray tracker. But I'll show you a bit more about that in a sec. So while I was doing this, there were some Sitecore specific considerations that I came across. The main thing that I just discussed was installing custom packages, so things like mobile device detector, that sort of thing. We chose to install the vanilla instance just because it's quick to do. But again, you could automate using the Sitecore PowerShell, which is what I meant to say before. That I'll be blogging about that on Twitter and things like that. So if you're interested in that, I'll be doing that in the coming weeks. The other consideration was when you're initiating a build, MS build and TDS need specific parameters passed to them to indicate that it's a desktop build rather than a Visual Studio build. So you have to add that onto your, when you call MS build, you add that on. I do that via the Maven plugin. And there were also some packages that conflicted with the TDS builds, and when we were deploying, it basically fell over. So the way we handle that is just commenting them out by dot backing them before we call the build, and then re-enabling them afterwards because they're not used for actually the TDS deploy. So I think it was friendly item names and mobile device detector, but they may have gone away now. But if you come across something like that when you're setting it up, then generally just comment it out before the build and re-enable it and see if that works. And publishing, so once you've deployed all the items into the tree and you've pretty much done everything, the last step is to do a publish, make sure everything's in the web database, and then you can start doing things like Selenium testing to test the stability of the package. Okay. So I'm going to talk you through Sonar. Has anyone heard of Sonar or SonarQube? It's now been rebranded. Do you use it yourself?
Yeah.
How do you find it?
It's really good for Java and Ruby-based products.
Okay.
.NET, the C# plugin is not great for the unit testing coverage for the unit test provider that we use, which is MSpec.
Okay.
Apart from that, it's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. I've had some issues with code coverage, but you know, with a bit of hassle you can get there. Okay, so for those that don't know, Sonar or SonarQube, which recently been rebranded, is an open platform to manage code quality. It's reasonably new, but marking its success that 30 of the top 100 Fortune 100 companies are now using it in some way or form. So, how did I come across it? Okay, my drivers were basically a couple of our projects at my previous company suffered from a lot of bugs. So, we were, again, if I go back to that previous slide, a few of them were getting to UAT, a few of them to get into prod. It was costing us a lot of money, and my manager at the time said, look, we need to sort this out. So, we were looking at trying to fix it at different stages in the process and catch these bugs early. As well, you can use it as a tool to drive developers' best practice. So you can define a set of coding rules that then the code is run against, and then it will flag up those violations to the developer as part of the continuous integration process. And so they can see where they're doing things wrong. So they can see that they've introduced a broken null check, or they can see that they're not they're variables. I mean, that's quite petty, but from a check style point of view, they can see that maybe they should have underscored their variables. Maybe they should have added more code comments, maybe they should have added more unit tests. What Sonar does is it pretty much brings all these stats that we may have in different places. Maybe in our build we've got some style cop, find bugs, things like that. Different places, it brings it into one centralised dashboard. So at its very core, it's just a database and a dashboard. Configurable dashboard, nonetheless. But yeah, that's pretty much what it is. The other driver is my project manager used to constantly hassle me. He'd be like, what's the state of the code? Is it ready to go? I need to do a deployment. By doing this, you can entertain your project managers. They don't really know. They're not really going to look at like violation stats and broken null checks. But at the very basic, they can understand: is it green or is it red? Green means good, red means bad. Yeah. So you can see here, these are red. Yeah, I'm not happy to release. Green means go. So that's a visibility is a key thing for me. I don't have to keep talking to my project manager all the time. Again, I said before, if we're doing things in order to achieve best practice, we've got high levels of unit test coverage, we're commenting code, you know, we're going to produce more robust code, and it's going to be of a higher quality, we're going to look better to our customers. And I think Sonar really helps you do that. Okay. So in addition to the database and the dashboard, you basically have a set of plugins in order to collate stats around your code. So you may be aware of some of these, but it's pretty much anything that you want to analyse the code with or you currently use. Most of the time there's a plugin for it, so things like FXCop or StyleCop or Index. And there's a rich API as well, so if you've got something that you want to include yourself, there's nothing to stop you, checking out the code, creating something and using it as a plugin for yourself. As long as you can upload stats into a database, you can visualise it on the dashboard. I won't go into all of these, I was going to, but in interest of time. So, as well as the analysis plugins, there's other plugins, mainly for reporting. So things like email, PDF. You've got an LDAP plugin, so if you've got user management and you want to pull that from LDAP, you can do that there, or it's got its own user management section, which is quite rich actually. You can actually drill right, I would have liked to have shown you a demo, but I haven't got the internet. But you can actually drill right down into the code and assign tasks to specific users that you've defined in Sonar and say, look, you've got a broken nunchuck on this line of code, please fix it. There's also plugins for things like IntelliJ for IDEs, so there's IntelliJ, there's Eclipse, there's a Visual Studio plugin, but it's pretty basic. I haven't used it myself, but and what that can do is you can constantly be generating, as you're typing, you can understand these stats, so that actually what actually gets into when you actually do a check-in, actually you shouldn't get many of these violations. The developers and the coders should be detecting these as they code. It's better in Eclipse and IntelliJ, but hopefully the .NET version will pick up. Okay. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of tools out there that maybe similar to this or provide different functionality. But for me, SonarQube, its completeness, its ability to report at different levels, its customization, for me it's really powerful. And if you can, it's actually really simple to set up and get running. You can get it running up really quickly. There's an install bat. You can run it as a Windows service, and it can be up in 5-10 minutes. All you've got to do is just configure, point your build to upload the stats to the specific database. And as a component in your continuous integration setup, I think it's really powerful. So SonarQube doesn't just support the standard Java and .NET. It supports 23 different languages. Its aim is to put source at the centre of a set of analysis of architecture and design, deduplication, unit tests, complexity, potential bugs, coding rules and comments. So it's bringing all these stats about your code into a centralised dashboard, and then you can basically customise your widgets and your dashboards to what you want to see. But all the data's there, and you can pick and choose the plugins you want to use. So if you've got a preference of maybe StyleCop or Park Cover or something like that, you can pick and choose whatever you want. But yeah, there's currently support for 23 languages. From a .NET point of view, it supports C up to 5.0. It supports .NET 2, 3.5, 4 and 4.5, which is good for Sitecore 7. It supports Silverlight 3, 4 and 5. And for Visual Studio, it's been tested with 2008, 10 and 12 SLM files. And the best thing of all, it's free for .NET, C#, Java and JavaScript. So the main things that people are going to be using, it's free. Things like Visual Basic 6 is commercial. You can see basically on there, the ones that are commercial, you have to pay if you want to leverage their analysis tools. Okay, so that's pretty much SonarQube. The next thing is more of a light-hearted tool, but I quite like it. It's called Siren of Shame. So one of the main things for me is you can put a process together for continuous integration, but if they've got to log into a website and check it every 5 seconds. You know, they're not going to use it, and you're not going to get value out of it. So things like Hudson Tray Tracker or CC Tracker or Cruise Control Tracker or Bamboo Build Monitor. This is on that same vein. It's just literally a build monitor, but obviously it comes with a tray tracker, as you can see down below. Okay, so for me, there's nothing wrong with a blame culture. If you broke it, it's your responsibility to fix it. And it's not a school sports day. Not everyone's a winner. So people's feelings don't matter when we've got work to do. One of the great things that Siren of Shame comes with is this massive LED light siren that you can plug into your computer via USB. So when the build, it also comes with some mini versions as well, which you can have on each developer's desk. So when they break the build, it just goes mental. And equally, breaking the build's a crime, so it should be treated as such. So. The other unique selling point of Siren of Shame is it actually gamifies the build process. So gamifies is a made-up word, but they use it on the website. But what it does is you can earn achievements, leaderboards. So currently Anthony's beating me in the office because he fixed my build. So he's green and I'm red. So yeah, I'm not feeling too good about that right now. But there's things that basically you can earn achievements. It's a light-hearted way to encourage best practice. So you're more likely to check in more often. So you're not going to get as many nasty merges. Things like that. So it's encouraging best practice around checking in a build process. And that's pretty much it for me. So I've put together a couple of reference links. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Andy T Work. And I think Ingrid's going to be circling this around for you, so if you want to download it and do some reading. Actually, down here there's some interesting continuous integration posts from some of the colleagues at Sitecore, which I found really useful when I'm doing this. Obviously you've got Sitecore PowerShell, which has been really useful for me. Obviously you've got the Sitecore developer network, and then just a few links to some of the tools that I've used. Thanks a lot. Cheers.
Do we have any questions?
Oh yeah, questions.
Might turn the microphone around.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to ask you something on the personal experience with continuous integration.
Is the microphone turned on?
You have to get it quite close. Yeah, you've got to get it pretty close to your mouth.
Basically, you were saying that you were uploading this vanilla installation Sitecore.
Yeah.
And then, I guess through TDS, you were trying to stream the delta of the last commitment with GitHub or Bitbucket, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
In that case, does it mean that every time you do a deployment to Amazon, you run the whole scripts to populate the whole Sitecore instance? Or
No.
if not, in that case, how are you dealing with deletions of items in particular?
That's done by TDS, I believe.
Yeah, I
So
suppose
we can do
the
this.
scenario we have here is slightly different in that we're using this for a demonstration platform. So every time we do a build, we don't really care about existing content because the content's really controlled by us as creating something that's pre-canned and pre-baked. But there's a whole bunch of settings and a whole bunch of configuration in TDS. So if we're adding new items that are structurally important, for example, core database items, we can deploy those through TDS, but then ignore recursive items or items that already exist inside the deployed build. So there's a few configuration things. Ours is kind of a unique setup that we have there. TDS comes with a whole lot of parameters that you can use to get around them.
Equally, we're always installing on a fresh vanilla instance.
Yeah.
So what we do is we have a folder which is say Office Core. That's got our vanilla instance installed with all our packages installed. And the first step of the build process is to actually copy that folder into the build directory. And then what we do is we deploy into that. So we're never deploying into a vanilla instance that's already got our items deployed in it. We're doing it fresh each time.
Yeah, if we were doing that in a live deployment, then we configure TDS slightly differently. Obviously, with the TDS package, would be designed to deploy only the items that we need to merge into an existing live database with real content. So we would just configure our TDS deploy slightly differently to not blow everything up and install it.
Yeah, again, it's our use case is slightly different, but you know, it's slow at the moment, and I've found, as I say, some of the links down at the bottom of the reference slide, they talk about speeding up that process. So I'm going to, you know, when I have time, when I have time, I'm going to look into that and see if I can speed it up for specific. I mean, this is just for us, it's a deployment of package build, but we'd actually like to have a separate build that's just for developers. You know, so it's not running things like Selenium, it's just doing maybe the build, unit test, and so on. Trying to do that really quickly, so it may not even. Anyone else?
The question is regarding TDS. Basically, TDS just publishes only changes to basically Sitecore original files.
Okay.
So, do you republish basically Sitecore installation files every time before the build, and then publish the changes over, or how do you do it? Because sometimes you need to customize base Sitecore files, even some kind of, like, for example, login page for Sitecore client.
Yeah.
For example, you would like to change some text in there, so you need to customize that layout file and basically keep it tracked somehow.
Yeah, we have that in Office Core. The Sitecore login page is customized. It's only a small line of text that just says this is Office Core, but essentially we just bring that into the project. So when you've got the vanilla installation, there's 2 core database items that exist in that. So they're in a separate TDS project for core database, and that's set to, TDS's project is set not to deploy on MS Build, so we could do a manual synchronization of core items because you wouldn't want to automate that perhaps. And then in terms of Sitecore core files, we just have a separate folder inside our directory simply called shell, which just maps the items, and we source control our overrides to the Sitecore base. From there, it's very dirty and simple how we do it at the moment. But
yeah, basically the question is, during the build, TDS will deploy your bespoke changes to some kind of over Sitecore files.
yeah.
So where the original Sitecore files coming from during the build? Are these initial Sitecore installation
Yeah, so
files?
that's the vanilla instance that's on the box. Yeah, so there's a vanilla instance there, which is just literally Sitecore installed fresh from it, which you just extract from the file, and then we install modules on top of that, such as web forms and marketers.
Basically, the question is to Andy: how do you do that? Do you extract it extractly from original Sitecore zip archive, which is the original installation file?
So we have on the continuous integration server, one of the pre-steps to setting up the continuous integration setup is actually just to install Sitecore on that machine in a folder.
Yeah, the blank installation.
Blank installation.
Yeah.
And then what we do is to keep that isolated, so we know that it's going to be a code change, not a configuration change. We actually copy that into another folder. So once we've installed all the packages that we need, so mobile device, the friendly item names, lots of different packages that we use for Office Core. One of the first steps of the build process is just to clone that directory onto another directory, and then what we do is we use TDS to overlay the items onto that, and then at the end of that it gets deleted, it gets cleared down. But we've always got that installation on there. Now what I was saying previously is, what I'd like to do is, as part of the process, is actually not have to do that. So actually deploy Sitecore automatically, maybe using PowerShell or using PowerCore scripts. So we actually deploy. One of the steps is install Sitecore. The next step is install all the packages. Now, Anthony found a post as well, which is about wrapping up Sitecore packages in NuGet. So maybe there's something we can do with that. But again, in the references, the bottom 2 references are really good at talking about it.